You're listening to Were You Still Talking? All right, so I'll start about here. Hey, welcome back. You are listening to Were You Still Talking again, and this is Joel Albrecht once again in my Zoom studio today. Still, sorry folks, we have Jeffrey Bryan. Jeffrey is another person, just like last week with the AI expert. Jeffrey has an extremely long resume. He's an actor, producer, musician, currently plays keyboards for a band you may have heard of called Survivor. They have had somewhere between 5 and 10 top 10 hits in the 80s, and they have survived all this time. I looked them up on Wikipedia, and it was pretty amazing. I think they were trying to go the Pink Floyd path. If you know Pink Floyd, you might know what I'm talking about. That's kind of an obscure reference but the band's been it's been through some stuff. Jeffrey's been in the band since 2017, I believe, if Wikipedia is correct. And he also...
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. He also was the original Karate Kid.
I was in the original.
No, he was in the original Karate.
Yeah.
It
Otherwise,
was
we'd be
all
talking
based
about Cobra
on
Kai
his...
right now.
That's right. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. What it was like being in the Karate Kid, the good one, the original, the beginning of it all, the only one. Exactly. Yeah, that's my opinion too. So yeah, Jeffrey, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, Joel, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
So let's jump right in at the beginning. It's not the beginning, but a long time ago. A few years back, you were a very young actor in the Hollywood where you grew up, and you got a part in the Karate Kid.
The 1984 Karate Kid. That's right.
I was trying to... Okay, 1984. So I was...
That's when it was released.
That's when it was released. Just out of high school. I'd probably taken at least one karate class at that time. I liked... I was a big fan of the original. I thought it was a lot of fun. More for the Moriarty's character probably than anything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that guy,
Mr. Miyagi.
Mr. Miyagi, an amazing actor, and only recently learned that he knew no karate when he filmed that movie, which really shocked me.
Well, no, I mean, that would be kind of. I mean, a little bit, stereotypical to assume that he knew karate just because he was Japanese, or
I didn't mean it that way. I wasn't. It was because he was playing. These days, when someone plays a karate, teacher, they generally are experts. Like they've done karate for 20 years.
Actually, to clean that up, just so I can clean that up, so it's a little understandable. They were looking for a more authentic. I mean, we're jumping all over here, but this isn't the beginning. But they just since you brought Pat Morita up, he was a comedian. He wasn't into martial arts, and they were actually looking for a martial artist actor like a Bruce Lee or a Chuck Norris type guy. And so it was difficult for him to get that part. They weren't sold that he was the right guy. I understand he auditioned 5 times for that role.
Well, as much as I am a fan of Bruce Lee and I have seen Chuck Norris, I'm really glad that he got the part.
Well, I mean, he brought.
Because I would rather
completely.
I'd rather see an actor doing that.
Yeah. Well, he brought a sensibility and a dimension to the character that those other ones that we mentioned wouldn't have been able to do. So in the end, they made a great decision, and he won an Oscar for it. So I mean, obviously, the decision was the best one.
Yeah. So I guess it worked out all right for them.
And you can't really imagine another person in that role anyway.
Right.
And that just proves just how how just that image is burned in your brain, and you just can't remake Karate Kid without Mr. Pat Morita doing Mr. Miyagi.
We'll get into that in a minute, but
actually, this podcast is not about Pat Morita, believe it or not.
It's not. But how did you get into that? Like, were you auditioning for all kinds of things at that time?
At that time, I was. But honestly, it wasn't a plan. it wasn't. I was sort of winging it. I wasn't an actor, to be honest. I was a musician. I've been a musician my whole life. That's how I identify myself. Even back when I was 13, I was singing. That was my my weapon of choice was singing. You know, my instrument, and I was basically just pursuing things that would get me in front of people, being in bands and performing and being in shows and doing, you know, I do open mics. I do whatever I could, singer-songwriter stuff. And I was in a show called Too Young for Primetime Players that I kind of stumbled into one night at an open mic at the Laugh Stop on Ventura Boulevard. And one of the producers of this show I had no idea existed said, "You'd be great for our show." And they put shows on at the Roxy and the Laugh Stop. It alternated. The Roxy's on Sunset, for those that don't know, which would be very few, I would think, that would know where that was.
It's hard to say. I actually
lived
in
famous
LA.
Place.
I lived in LA for 11 years, so I know.
Yeah.
I know the area pretty well.
It's a very famous. You know, it's the famous Roxy on Sunset Boulevard, and it was not a children's show place. Is that you?
That was me. Zoom just advertised to me. Zoom just popped up a window, so it might have glitched out.
How entertaining!
So yeah, thank you so much.
We'll be right back after these important messages from Zoom. So anyhow, I said, okay, yeah, I'll do this show. It was a variety show. It was basically kids, and all these kids were younger than me. I was about 16, and so I was like the old guy, and I was coming in as a singer, and I ended up writing for the show and producing songs for some of the other kids, and that's sort of just kind of getting my feet wet doing that. And, you know, that was my gig, so to speak. And every Sunday we'd put on these matinee shows for birthday parties for other kids. And it was very unusual, and it got the attention of the media a little bit. And so they, I guess somehow someone from the Merv Griffin Show wanted to do a segment on it, and they invited a few of the performers, me included, to come on the Merv Griffin Show and perform what we do in the show, which was, you know, just songs. You know, I wanted to sing my own song. You know, 16, I was writing, of course, and they wouldn't let me perform my own song because it wasn't something they could clear in publishing. So I had to pick from a list of songs. It was
bizarre.
Yeah.
Oh, and for those of you who don't know, the Merv Griffin Show was like the Tonight Show a long time ago when some of us were younger.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to go into that.
For those three young
It was just
viewers.
a variety show. It was very similar to Johnny Carson. He was sort of the counterpart to Johnny Carson.
Right.
There was Johnny Carson and there was Merv Griffin. Those were two big talk show moguls at the time. And so I did this show, and all these kids that were in this show were like actors, most of them. You know, They were performers, actors, and they were all had their stage moms and trying to push them into the business and stuff. And I just was getting experience performing every week, and I did this for a year or two. I mean, I got so much experience every week being on a major stage performing. You can't beat that. You can't get that in a classroom, you know. So it was very valuable to me. And then somebody had seen me from the Merv Griffin Show and suggested that that they get me an agent. And I'm like, an agent for what? You know, music? And they're like, no, acting. And I guess because I look young and I was just about, you know, not far from being 18, and they figured if they can get me in the business early, then by the time I'm 18, I could still play 14 and 15-year-old kids, which would be, you know, better for, you know, it's cheaper for them, for the studios, if they hire an actor that can play someone that's underage. So I went out on these interviews. I wasn't really all that interested in it. I just was doing it because here's an opportunity. I don't know what this is about. It wasn't very comfortable for me. I never studied acting. I didn't even know how to memorize my lines. I didn't know what I was doing, you know. But I landed a feature film, and it wasn't Karate Kid. It was Hot Moves, believe it or not. A movie called Hot Moves, which you can find on YouTube these days. And as I've said in the past, you know, I can't give you back your 90 minutes. If you watch it, it's on you. It was one of those Porky's kind of, you know, let's get laid before our senior year kind of thing. But I starred in that movie, and that was my first experience in the movie biz. And so I had a little bit of a resume, and they were sending me out on stuff. And one day I got a call to meet with John Avildsen, the director of Rocky. And he was working on a movie called The Karate Kid. And they gave me the part. It was a 2-week part, so there wasn't a lot of acting involved. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then when before I started my 2 weeks, they extended my contract for the entire 4 or 5 months of shooting. So I was involved from the very beginning, from when they started shooting the movie to the very end, to the wrap. And I just don't have a lot of speaking roles in it. There were parts that were cut out. I think they thought that they were going to have more interaction with the main character. Daniel LaRusso was going to, get to know some of the kids in the neighborhood. And it really, in 90 minutes, it's hard to tell that much of a story. They had to get on with it. So I'd come back every day to my dressing room, and there was all kinds of redacted lines and redacted scenes. Mm-hmm. So a lot of scenes were in the script that didn't get shot, some that got shot that never made it. In the end, I had a very small part, but not from a perspective of an 18-year-old. I was there the whole time, and it was grueling at times because I was like, I want to work. I want to work, and I wasn't.
Yeah, that's the movie business. It's really it can be difficult. I actually had a friend that was in one of the big Vietnam movies, and he was part of the platoon in this movie. And he had a speaking role, and he had some interaction in the movie, but he wasn't in it at all. And they went to I think it was the Philippines, and were really beaten up to do that, and not even in the movie. So just part of the business.
Oh wow, yeah. It's here's the thing, I really wasn't at first that really that interested, in the whole acting thing. It was just a means to, maybe where will this lead me musically? How can maybe I'll meet some people, maybe I'll do this. There was no real, it didn't feel like a career move for me. It just felt like a little bit of a diversion. And honestly, by the time the end of 1983 came around, Karate Kid wrapped in November or something. It was really tough to get another gig that following year. Before the movie came out, I didn't have a good reel I had a great resume. I had done a couple walk-ons and a couple TV shows and a few other things. And so I had a good resume. Obviously, I was hireable. But when it came to theatrical work, which is all I was interested, I didn't care about commercials. Much to the chagrin of my agency, they would have preferred because they want to make money. They don't care what you do. So they didn't like the fact that all I wanted to do was go out on theatrical roles and I wasn't getting booked. And I think part of that was because, at the time the 80s was very coming to age, teenage movie centric. There were Fast Times at Ridgemont High and High School USA and Porky's, and we can go on and on. By the time that year ended and those movies were made, I think people were starting to move on from that genre a little bit. I mean, it'd been done already, and I wasn't getting roles. And so by the time 84, 85 rolled around, I was still kind of bopping around trying to be an actor, going, what am I doing? If I'm going to be broke, I might as well be broke doing what I love to do. And I needed to get back to music, and so I did that. But that's how I got into Karate Kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a great story. And but really your passion was always music. It was just kind of a side. The acting was a bit of a sideline. It was an unexpected, fork in the road. Mm-hmm. That in entertainment, in the music business and the entertainment business, it all is the same stuff. So you don't really say no. If someone's offering you movie roles or opportunities, you take them because you don't know where they're going to lead. But no, I didn't have the skill set in my mind as an 18-year-old
as, say, had I had been studying acting or wanting to be an actor. It really wasn't an interest of mine,
Right. But you have studied music.
Oh, yeah.
For a long, long, long time. You took vocal lessons for 10 years from some very prominent teachers, you produce, you play keyboards, you play guitar, you sing. Now, are you able to do all those things with Survivor?
I don't juggle.
Okay. I do, because I'm a drummer. I don't know if you know that about drummers.
Yeah, you probably can. Survivor. Well, if you want to skip to Survivor, no, I'm a keyboard player for Survivor.
It was kind of a leap, wasn't it?
It was a cool segue, I think.
Because I was curious.
But there is a tie-in. But no, you actually did stumble across something that is, I think, pretty interesting. There's a connection between Survivor and Karate Kid.
I heard that in your explanation. Because the director of Rocky was also the director for Karate Kid,
right?
And Eye of the Tiger was Rocky 3. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but he didn't. Okay,
he didn't direct.
A little mixed up. Yeah. So the director for Karate Kid was John Avildsen, the famous, won an Oscar for Rocky 1. He didn't. Right. I don't think he was the director for Rocky 3.
I don't think so either.
The connection before. Survivor, though, was Survivor wrote the theme song, the big Eye of the Tiger for Rocky 3.
Right.
But were also asked to record the theme song for Karate Kid, The Moment of Truth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's on the soundtrack, and it was used to promote the movie. It's called The Moment of Truth. And you remember The Moment of Truth? Da-da-da-da.
Probably. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You look like you don't know it, so I thought I'd sing it. Anyway, it was a big hit, and the point is that I didn't know Survivor then, 30-something years ago. I mean, I knew them from Rocky 3, of course, because that came out in '82, and so they already had a big hit, and people knew who they were for the Eye of the Tiger, and they were included in this soundtrack that was also had great artists in the soundtrack. There were tons of people that. And not just Survivor, but there were a lot of well-known artists at the time that were involved. And the thing is that I wasn't really that aware of that. But when I met them 30-something years later, and now I'm being asked to go out and perform with them, I did some research, and I noticed that The Moment of Truth, there's a video for it. And the video was used to promote the movie, of course, because it's in the trailer. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the video by virtue of being in some of the scenes in Karate Kid. So I'm not only in the band now. I'm in one of their first music videos.
That's really amazing. It kind of speaks to how small Hollywood really is.
I guess
it's kind of a small town. A lot of people know. You meet people all the time.
It's a crazy serendipitous, crazy connection. And I've had others with them through the years that weren't apparent to me until I met them, until I actually started working with them. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff I could tell you about Karate Kid and Survivor and Jeff and just like little. I'm sure it's not that different for other people too if they think about it, but it seems very very interesting to me that I never really strayed that far from my youthful, original jobs. I was kind of, 30 years later, I come right back to Karate Kid. Right. And with Cobra Kai now.
That's right.
What's funny, Cobra Kai, I'm sure you're familiar with Cobra Kai on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you what you think when you think of that.
I love it. It's very good. I love it. I'm not in it. Who knows? You never know. They might bring back the whole cast at one point. But I didn't have a big enough, known enough role, I think, for them to identify with me with anything. But the point I brought it up for was that I'm reconnecting with all my cast members from the original Karate Kid. We've talked, and I haven't talked to some of these guys in 30 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
So Frankie Avalon Jr., a friend of mine, and Israel Warby from the movie. There was a gang we called Freddy's Gang in the movie. Mm-hmm. There was a Cobra Kai, which were the karate dudes, and then there was this other group of kids that were not karate dudes. They were just guys, And so there was Israel, myself, Frankie Avalon Jr., Tom Fridley, and Ken Daly, and the five of us had parts. I mean, we were his friend. We were, egging him on to talk to Allie. We were playing soccer with him. We were doing all kinds of stuff. Some of it got in the movie. Most of it didn't. Anyway, so all those guys, had parts in the movie as long as I did, but we don't know who they are.
Right.
Yeah. You'd have to really go back and look at it and go, oh, wait, there's more people here that I keep seeing in these scenes, but I don't know why they're there.
So really you didn't do any, the only people that did the karate were mainly the karate gang.
It was a karate gang. It was the Cobra Kai. All the guys, Kai. I guess they were, the seniors that were 5 or 6 or 7 of them that were, had this little club that they would go to this dojo together, the same dojo, and they were being taught by the same evil dojo master.
The evil dojo master. That was the only part I didn't like about it, because I was actually, in that time, I was taking some martial arts, different times in my life, and that whole philosophy being the opposite of what actual martial arts philosophy was. I was like, what is this?
No mercy.
But that whole thing was like, this is
strike
crazy.
First, no mercy, all that stuff.
All that stuff. Yeah. It's like one of my favorite teachings was, your best weapon, it's what's on your feet. Turn and run.
Right. Turn and run. It's a last resort to have to use your karate, supposedly.
Exactly. It's still a good movie, though. It's still a really enjoyable movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't have worked without an evil dojo master. But how did he become? How would he have become that to begin with? Because it's such a gentle sport.
Obviously he was abused as a child.
Yeah.
Right.
He had a Vietnam. Well, no, he had a Vietnam connection.
Oh, that was it.
There was the PSTD.
Right.
And, he had some issues. He was a neurologically messed up dude.
And the kid kind of turns around at the end. Right?
Well, yeah.
He kind of sees that it's wrong.
Yeah. Well, come on. You sense that you're being pushed in the wrong direction, and this can't be right.
Right.
But, I don't know if you want to get into this, but there's a whole folklore of mythos on the internet about how Daniel LaRusso was the bad guy for trying to steal his girlfriend. To steal his girlfriend. It's like, come on, really? But what's interesting is that with the new Cobra Kai, they've been able to take some of those ideas and go, well, who are these people? And because it's a series that runs for multiple times, it's a series, 3 years. They're working on a 4th season now.
Oh wow.
So they're able to really get into these characters, and you find out that there is no bad or good guys. They're just people. Some are damaged more than others.
That's great. That's a great area to focus on, or to learn more about these guys. I like that. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, but bringing it back to me for a minute, regarding Karate Kid, is that it how I tied in is that Karate Kid is a great movie, and through the years it always had longevity, and it became sort of iconic in the way that Eye of the Tiger was for the Rocky series. And now we're at a point where Cobra Kai comes back with such a force that it's awakened all of these other Karate Kid people I know and stuff. So I mean, my it's a full circle. I'm in the band that was in the trailer of the movie, and now I'm seeing people I know on Cobra Kai, and it's very cool. It's like, wow.
That is cool. It's really awesome that you're reconnecting with people. That's always fun.
Yeah, it's just weird how life kind of made a complete circle in a way.
Mm-hmm. That's wild.
Yeah,
and absolutely.
Well, for me,
But since the original Karate Kid, you've pretty much worked in music all that time, right? You've worked...
Yeah, exclusively.
Yeah. So how did you then get hooked up with Survivor? How did that come about? How did you...
Well, that I don't...
How did they hire you?
I don't have a good story for this one.
Oh, right.
I'm going to be honest. I've been honest, but this is the honest truth, is I got an email. That's it. I was just hanging out in my studio, and beep, I get an email, and it's from, I have no idea who it's from. It's one sentence. Would you be interested in playing keyboards for Survivor? Not even signed.
And you opened it, or you didn't think it was like fake or something?
Well, it looked like someone from a music company. So obviously it got my attention. And then I looked at the email and it came from Irving Azoff's office. So I knew it had to be from somebody that was something, I mean, but I honestly was very hesitant because I was like, I don't know these guys. I don't know how they got a hold of me. I don't know what that's all about. You got to remember, though, I mean, I've been playing in L.A. for 150 years or so. I mean, I've been playing everywhere. Every club you can think of, everything from the Roxy to the Whiskey to, Viper Room. I mean, I've been playing forever here. Yeah, and so, I mean, I know lots of musicians that, in fact, the keyboard player that I replaced from Karate Kid, from Survivor, I actually knew him. I mean, we weren't friends, but he's friends with tons of people I know, and it's a small circle of musicians that I know. Right. So, when I just didn't realize that I was that, in that closely related to someone that was in the band. So it could have come from a myriad of different places. It could have come from another musician suggesting me, or maybe they found me, on some of the work I've done for TV and film work, or who knows? I have no idea.
That's interesting that you didn't even know.
No. I mean, my main thrust for the past good 10, 15 years has been I wanted to tour more. I wanted to play more. I do a lot of studio stuff, obviously, and I write and have published stuff. So I just, as a keyboard player, I'm still hungry to travel and perform, and so hooking up with a national act like Survivor was perfect. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome. And that actually brings up a question I was really curious about, because I've done a little bit of touring, and I've played in 150 bands, and so I'm wondering.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure you know. I moved up here because I figured I could be a struggling musician anywhere. I didn't have.
Yeah, right.
It didn't.
You got your pick of LA. Pick of the world, pretty much.
Anywhere in the world, you can be a struggling musician. Doesn't matter. And I thought, well, if I'm going to tour, it doesn't matter where I start from. And I actually did tour. I drove around with a band. I wouldn't call it tour. Just a country band playing.
Oh, cool.
Playing the big clubs that are left. I didn't know there was clubs like that left in the world, but we just toured all the local 5 states, this area, and
oh, nice.
I did that way back in the 80s when I was first playing drums. I went out with a hair band and we did cover music, and we had our PA was ridiculous. It wouldn't even fit in this room, and a PA, a light system, all brought on our backs basically. Wow. Set everything up and played for 5 days, and the clubs were, some of them were 500 people, or more.
Wow.
Just these massive clubs. So I didn't think these
hairband days.
Yeah, hairband days. Yeah. We played Whitesnake and all of,
Very cool.
Guns N' Roses, and probably played, I'm pretty sure I played a Survivor song. I can't imagine we didn't play Survivor at that time.
Yeah. Well, Survivor wasn't really considered a heavy metal band, but yeah.
Well, you got to play, when you have 5 sets, you play everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true.
We looked like a hair band, but we played whatever people wanted to hear that day. And so when I went out with this country band, 20 years later, I was shocked that some of those clubs still exist, but they're all country now at that time.
Oh, really?
And because, it was modern country. I'm doing air quotes for those who don't watch videos.
Which is actually just regular rock.
For a drummer, it's the same.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. What's the difference? You got your violin and you got an accent. That's
or a pedal steel.
At a pedal steel, or just an amazing country guitar player. That was
right.
I was always shocked by how good the people on the tracks were. I shouldn't have been shocked, but all these different songs I was learning, I was always like, holy crap, these people they're monsters, and But everyone's known forever that Glenn Campbell was one of the best guitar players in history. So I shouldn't have been surprised. Like Tom Paisley and all
those guys. Yeah.
Whoa.
Amazing players. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my last touring experience. But what I wondered was where do you guys, before times, Where would you
before
guys
COVID,
play?
You mean?
Yeah.
You mean? Oh, okay.
Before the. Yeah.
Well,
where would Survivor go? Like, would you be hired by a sheik or?
No. Well, that could happen. No, I mean, where don't we play is really we play everywhere, every state. You know, I mean, we play state fairs, we play casinos, we play big theaters, and we're usually touring with, Rick Springfield or Loverboy or Foreigner. So yeah, I mean, these, I don't know. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the era, that '80s era, bands like REO Speedwagon and Night Ranger and Styx and go on and on. All those bands is a huge business, and they're constantly on the road. Those guys Styx probably did 150 shows in 2019.
Yeah.
I wish Survivor did that many. I mean, we don't come that close to that many, but we'll do double bills with a lot of these guys. And so, yeah, sometimes the shows are huge. I mean, we've played speedways in the middle of Iowa, where there's, 30,000 seats. I'm not saying they're all filled, but there's 30,000 seats.
But they're there.
I played to a lot of seats.
I know that.
Yeah. But we've and you'll be surprised. There's a whole business based around barbecues and festivals and car shows, and they hire well-known acts to play them. So yeah, there's a big circuit.
I guess I do see that, because when I see, like, I'm a pilot, not a current pilot, but I know how to fly, and so I love cool. air shows, and every air show they usually hire a pretty big band like that, and some of the air shows, they usually hire somebody really big, and the fair here in Eugene, Lane County Fair. Every single artist you mentioned has played that fair. Loverboy, REO, all these guys. So Survivor might have played there.
Oh, they have.
Over the
years.
think
we played. Yeah, I think in 2016 they were in Eugene.
Yeah. Okay. It seemed like they probably were. They probably came through. And
so we play up and down the. We haven't been since I've been in the band. We haven't done too much on the California coast, much to my disappointment. Because I'm constantly flying. They're not, because they're in the Midwest. So they're in Chicago.
They are, okay.
Yeah, they're a Chicago-based
right,
band.
Right.
And, depending on how they feel, how far they want to go. I mean, they really have the luxury of just picking and choosing what they want to do. And I'm just, here's your plane ticket. See you there. I mean, it's not like I'm asked to decide what we're going to play.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So, they play a lot in the Midwest, but we played up in Washington and Bellingham area and, Oregon. And we've gone, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Minneapolis, Oklahoma, and everywhere. I mean, just Texas, I feel like a politician, It's been to every state.
So it's mostly
not in this election, though.
Thank God. So it's mostly flyouts. You're not doing bus tours.
No, I mean they do them. They do, but the last in 2019 it was all flyouts. It's rigorous, to be honest, because a lot of times we'll play a weekend and we'll do a Friday, Saturday, and they're in different parts of the country.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
We'll do a show in Illinois and then fly to Connecticut or fly to, St. Louis or whatever the next day. So, I mean, it's wham bam.
And I'm kind of a gear nerd, so I'm curious. You take all that, are you responsible for all that gear when you go, or do you
I'm responsible for playing it.
Okay, so, but it's there for you.
It's my gear, though. Yeah,
okay.
It's my gear, but we have a road crew.
Okay.
So they're everywhere we go domestically, they travel by truck, and the band flies. So we get there after they do.
Oh, okay.
And I've got my B3 with my 122, and
nice.
I've got this is my motif, and I have another rig out in my playroom out there for other bands that I'm in that a mirrored rig that they have in Chicago that I have here, so I can work on things. And when I show up, I just stick the USB plug in and change the patches, and I'm ready to go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But it is.
But no,
so you have a mixture of old and new. You have, or is it like, what's your gear?
Well,
what's your favorite stuff?
Well, my favorite stuff is my vintage gear.
Uh-huh.
I record with it, and in every opportunity that I can, I opt for a real instrument. You know, I have 3 different types of organs. I have my Hammond. It's a B2, but it's been modified to be a B3. So I got a B3, but I also have, which I don't use very often, the B3, because it's too heavy and I need a crew. So if I'm not traveling with a crew, it ain't going anywhere. It's 400 pounds. I'm not going to stick it in the back of my Prius.
No.
You know? I mean, I would love to. I will try. But
my drums fit. So
yeah.
I love that your keyboard doesn't. I could put a whole drum set in there.
Yeah, well, the B3 would not.
Yeah, probably not.
But I also have a Hammond SK2, which is a clone type of organ, and I have something from this Italian company called a DMC 122, which is also similar to a Hammond, but it's very MIDI-able. I can use any drawbar to control a patch or a sound or anything. So it's sort of an organ MIDI controller, which is really very cool. I use that a lot. And then I'm kind of old school when it comes to my pianos. I've stuck with older motifs and my S90 ESs. I have 2 of them because I just like the way they sound, and I don't think that the newer keyboards are offering better piano sounds. They're just offering more.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
The sample technology hasn't really changed in 10, 15 years.
Yeah, because I'm not sure where it would go. I mean, right?
Exactly. I mean, you're already at the highest fidelity you can have.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess you can give me wooden keys and charge me an extra $500 for it or whatever, but it's really not going to make that much of a difference. And so, but I have my Wurlitzer 200A out there, and I've got my Rhodes 73. So that's the stuff I like. Sweet, but I don't get to tour with them as often, because they're heavy, and even bands that are used to that gear, like Survivor, as the years have progressed, they opt for the lighter stuff too, because it's easier on the road crew.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So those guys work
but
hard.
every time I can, I push for the B3, the real deal, because nothing sounds like it.
Right.
Nothing. And it just looks awesome.
It also does. Yeah, that's true. So have you done any of the, like every other band in America is doing, have you done any of these Zoom concerts, which I still can't figure out how they do? Okay. It took me a long time to figure out how in the world can they be going live over something like Zoom and all be playing together. And
they're not.
They're not. I know. I finally connected. Well, they're just taping it to a track, and they're putting it together. Yeah. And then, I mean, there was one, I can't remember who was playing, but it was a track from an album. I think it was the Rolling Stones. They were playing to an album track.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was pretty obvious it was the original track. And I was like, okay, now I get it. That's easier.
Right.
So
well, no, I mean, I've seen Neil Finn, Crowder House, and a bunch of them, do it live together. And I've seen them do it, separately as well, but they're not playing to tracks. They're actually playing the tracks, but they recorded their parts separately.
Yeah. That too. I've seen that. I've seen more of that. Because most of the people I've seen live, it's them in an acoustic, or it's them and a couple other people in a room, and
that's doable. I'm in other bands, so I mean, the other bands I'm in, are doing other things. Survivor has got a different attitude about it. I don't know much, to be honest. I don't know if they're gonna jump back on the bandwagon when this thing's finally cleared or not. I really don't.
That's too bad.
I mean, Frankie Sullivan, the guitar player, wrote "Eye of the Tiger." He's in the band, and he's in his mid-60s. And that's not particularly old, but he's that's all he's ever done. He's toured for 40 years, year after year after year after year, and I'm sure that he doesn't want to be forced not to play, but in some way, I would take the liberty of saying without him here to say it, is that it's probably a good opportunity for him to take a little bit of time off that he's never done.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Because it looked like they had some periods where they weren't playing, but he's been playing the whole 40 years constantly.
Yeah, he's the one common denominator from 1978 when they started to now.
Amazing.
Yeah,
so is he the only?
Missed a show.
Is he the only original member, or are there?
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
But there's another guy in the band. His name's E.L.O. He's the bass player. He's been playing with them since 1994.
Oh wow. Okay.
So and he's on their last album in 2006. So I wouldn't call him an original member, but he's been in the band so long that.
And isn't the drummer somebody's son from the band? Is
it's
right?
Frankie's son.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. Well, that's like Led Zeppelin. They're playing with Led Zeppelin plays with Jason Bonham all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
Jason
when they
Bonham.
play. Yeah. Jason Bonham.
Yeah. Jason's constantly doing Zeppelin gigs or Zeppelin-ish stuff.
Yeah.
He's good. So the band is. And of course, the lead singer's the second lead singer, Jimmy Jamison, the famous Jimmy Jamison. He passed away in 2014. So he's not there.
And that's really sad. What amazed me was that from what I could gather, there's a 25-year-old singing with the band now.
Yeah, Cameron Barton.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he is amazing. He's really good. Yeah, sounds great. I mean, he's got the youthfulness that the band's music needed.
Right.
Dave Bickler's still alive and still going. He, recently put out an album of his own. But he sang, he sang the first 3 albums with Survivor and The Eye of the Tiger, of course. But he has a different kind of voice. He doesn't have that Steve Perry, Jimmy Jamison thing going on. He's got a different kind of thing. And as he's gotten older, he hasn't been able to reach those stratosphere keys that they were originally in. And I know that Frank wants to keep the band as original as possible musically. So, he wanted a younger guy, I guess.
I don't see how anyone can hit those keys as they age, hit those notes.
Yeah.
I mean, Journey's the same thing. They have a, they got a really young guy to come in who sounds exactly like Steve Perry.
Yeah, but Arnell, they also tuned down a half step.
Oh, they did too. Oh, okay. I didn't even realize. It still sounded pretty close to me. Of course, I'm only listening to Steve Smith anyway. If I listen to Journey, so
yeah. Well, then how do you feel? Steve Smith's no longer with them either. So.
But he did play with them for recently for a short time,
2018.
For a little time. So no, I would rather
Steve Smith. I would
rather watch a Steve Smith gig. At this point,
really?
Than a Journey gig.
Because I think I don't know how you feel. As a drummer, I don't know how you feel about this, but Steve Smith seemed to have gotten soft as the years have gone.
Well, because he's played so much jazz. Yeah,
jazz. I know, and he's approaching the Journey stuff kind of.
So I noticed that too. I didn't see him live, but I saw videos of it, and it was.
It was not the
man.
Castanova's killing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he's an amazing drummer as well.
That guy's just. And have you heard him sing?
I haven't. I'll have to check that out.
Oh my God, he sounds like Steve Perry.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're. Neil Sean has a band with Casanova and who was playing? Oh, it was not Ross Valerie. I'm trying to think. Anyway, the keyboard player. I've lost my. Remember the old keyboard player who played organ with them originally?
I was trying to remember his name earlier today. I can't remember his name because I remember everyone else from that band. I don't know why I'm
thinking of Toto all of a sudden.
But
yeah,
amazing.
Jonathan Cain replaced him.
You.
Yeah, but that wasn't Jonathan Cain. He's another
Cain.
famous guy. He's another amazing keyboard player. It'll come to me. Anyway, point is that he did this little club gig, and it's on YouTube, and I forgot what he called it. But anyway, and it's basically they just do Journey songs, and the drummer is singing, and he's killing it. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll find a link and I'll send it to you.
You
would dig it. As a drummer, I would think you'd like that drummer.
I'll put it in I'll put it in the show notes as well if people are curious. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
if
cool.
I find it. Yeah.
That was always the fun part about living in L.A. is that you could see these people like that in clubs. I would go to small clubs and see Vinnie Colaiuta and all kinds of huge people, and actually Steve Perry was there watching at one of those clubs, checking it out, so that's always fun.
I mean, LA used to be a very cool place for that. You could go to the Troubadour and rub shoulders with people and stuff, and it's gotten a little more through the years. Certainly right before COVID, the scene here is not what it used to be. It's very tribute band oriented nowadays.
Oh, even in L.A. Wow. Because I know it is everywhere else
in the
world.
Business.
I mean, that's...
And all of us musicians, even the ones that, have gone on the road professionally like myself, I've been in those bands too. They make money. Yeah. They make money and you get to play, you get to really... You get to play in front of people because people want to see and fantasize about what it was like, and so if you got a good show, people will come to see it. So I mean, it's a business, like anything else.
One of the biggest bands in this area was a Pink Floyd tribute band for probably 20 years. I mean, they could draw 10,000 people to their show in little old Eugene, Portland, the I-5 corridor, and they would put on the whole show. They had a really nice light show and had the songs down, and so it's been going on a while, definitely.
Yeah, I did a show just a couple weeks ago at the Canyon Club parking lot show with Zeppigan, with the band Zeppigan, so I mean there's work there. And I meet some very, very talented guys. I mean these aren't slouches.
Do you remember Dred Zeppelin? Did you ever? Do you remember? Of course. Yeah. They were a
friend of mine was in that band who's now Doug Rappaport, his guitar player. He plays with what's his face? I always forget his name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, Dred Zeppelin. Yes.
That was before it was popular to be in a tribute band, but they were awesome. I just remember though they blew me away. It was like
they were so unique too, because I mean they weren't really doing Zeppelin exactly. They were they were doing sort of a reggae rock Zeppelin thing,
and they were so good at it. I don't know. It was just like I didn't know Zeppelin could sound that way. It was great. I've always been curious. When it went from, back when I started in these bands, they were called cover bands. I'm wondering when it changed from cover band to tribute band.
Well, cover band's not a tribute band. It's a very different band.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a different business. It's a completely different business.
Mm-hmm.
A cover band is just, someone that's going to get hired to do a party or a bar or a gig. And you can, and sometimes a corporate gig might pay a lot, a couple $1,000 or more. It depends on the band and what they do. So there's cover bands that cover the 80s, cover, top 40, dance bands. That's a different business. Tribute band is a tribute to one band, or one artist. The Eagles. Mm-hmm. That's all they do, and they do an Eagles show as if it were the Eagles, and so it's a different business. It's a different animal.
That's interesting. I've never really I've never made that connection before, because it seems like a lot of different bands are calling themselves tribute bands, but that now that makes more sense to me. Yeah, it's a tribute to the show.
Bands I've been in, the bands I've been involved with in LA. I mean, it's a big business, and it's up there, just no different than the national level in some cases. And some of these agents are very, very sought after to because the bands that I'm familiar with, the ones that are at the top of their game, they're phenomenal. I mean, some of them are really, really good.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, it makes sense.
Like Kenny Metcalf from Elton. He does Kenny Metcalf does a show. His name's Kenny Metcalf, but he does an Elton show. He's been doing it for 20 years.
Wow.
And it's amazing. It's an amazing show. And, they travel over the country. And I've got friends in that band, and they're just, so, I mean, my point is that there's been the business has changed. People have found ways to make money. It turns out that musicians learned very early on that no one wants to hear new music live.
Right.
Unless they're familiar with it.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Unless they're from New York, is that what you said?
No, from L.A.
Oh, from L.A.
I'm just saying, being in L.A., musicians have learned early on that, no one wants to hear your original shit unless they've heard it.
Right.
And so unless you have some amazing YouTube channel or some, something, a hit song, people, they'll pay $30, $40 a ticket to go see a Zeppelin replica more than they'll see an original new band that they don't know.
Oh, yeah.
And that's never changed. Well, it has. In the 70s and early 80s, it has that was different. People were more interested in hearing something that they could tell their friends about, and being the first one to talk about it and say, hey, I just checked this band out. You got to check them out. They're amazing. They blow away your favorite band. You got to check them out. No one does that anymore, Oh,
that's too bad. Because it was in the 90s, there was still a little of that. There was still original bands that's when I was there, and there was still some of that. But I know what you mean. I was in a lot of originals bands that, no one cared, no one cared to see it. Our friends thought it was amazing, but you only have so many friends.
Right. Well, I mean, I spent my whole, most of my life in bands, and most of them were my own, just my own bands that I put together. And, unless I got an opportunity to do the theme song for Rocky's 12, who's going to hear my stuff? The internet is sort of the great equalizer a little bit, but unfortunately, although you can get people to your channel, and there's ways, if you're adept in marketing and you can learn how to work the internet, so to speak, to your advantage, there is ways to build a following without the aid of high-end promotion and record companies. But it's also created so much artwork now, so much stuff, that it's we're inundated with a lot of mediocrity from the internet. So yes, it's easier to make a name for yourself, but it's much harder to make a career because there's so much crap. Everybody and their grandma can now make a record in their house. Right. Is your grandma making records?
My grandma's not. Well, she could be, but they would be very terrestrial type records.
Right. Well, yeah, they're very. I understand what you're saying.
She might be.
My grandma probably would be making records right now. Maybe she is. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, could be. But I know what you mean. They're so, and the fact is, as easy as it is to make anything and throw it up on YouTube, I have found through a little bit of research that the people that get big on YouTube generally work their butt off, just like the bands that got big in the 80s by touring everywhere. They work their butt off.
Yeah, it's not any different in that respect. It's the medium has shifted, but
the medium has made it so anyone can do it, but that person still has to be like really dedicated if they're going to push it.
In some ways, I think it's harder. I think it's harder for those people because record companies don't really want to do a damn thing, and you don't really need one. If you've done all the work, all you need is maybe a loan, a GoFundMe page,
right?
I mean, I'm not really sure what you what a record company is really going to do for you. In the earlier days, the 70s and 80s, that was the path.
Right,
you go out, you play, you build a following, and someone would come see you, and they'd be like, sit down, have a cigar, you're going to go far.
Right. Yes.
To your Pink Floyd reference there. And nowadays people are like, I don't need that. I don't even know what that is. Who cares? And it's just very different world.
Yeah, it is.
I would imagine.
It kind of amazes me that record companies still exist in such a big way because,
yeah,
the really big artists, the Grammy artists are all on labels still. And I'm always just kind of like, why? Why don't you just have your own deal? I mean, your own management company could be doing everything that label does. But
exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, there must be a benefit to it that maybe I'm not aware of.
Yeah, there must be.
Obviously. I mean...
It's just not like the days that we were struggling, hoping to get a record deal. It was the label was the path at that time, but 20 or 30 bands would be signed and nothing would be done with them. And all the money would be poured into the 2 or 3 bands that were making money. So it was always a tough road, I
have had tons of friends that were signed that you would never know it. I mean, it wasn't exactly like they were living it.
Right.
Right.
You weren't going to go visit.
In fact, I was signed to A&M's publishing company, Almo-Irving, back in the 90s. I was a staff writer for A&M, and it was right about the time when Polygram purchased Almo-Irving, which was their publishing company, and then it became Rondor, which is Rondor today. And so, I was on the label, and I was doing my demos and recording for them and delivering my 2 or 3 songs a month. But when the hostile takeover came, they just cleaned the roster out, and they were like, "Well, this guy's not got a hit. This guy doesn't have a hit. This guy doesn't have a hit. Adios."
It was I actually worked in the mailroom at A&M Records. And
cool.
So it was a fun time.
On La Brea?
Yeah, on La Brea.
Yeah.
And actually I worked there when the riots happened. So
92.
Yeah, so we went up on the roof and you could see those riots coming.
Yeah.
Like that's on fire. That's a ways off. Well, there's another one, but it's closer. Well, there's another one. Hey, everyone go home.
Right.
That was quite a time. But when
so I remember that day because I was in a rehearsal studio in North Hollywood. Just over the hill from you.
Right. Yeah. Just right up. And I lived in Hollywood.
Watching it on the TV going, should we go home?
Right. We were a block away from it where we lived because we lived right off Franklin. So the riot.
Who would ever thought that we'd get used to these things now?
Yeah,
I mean, they're not, I'm not saying we're used to them, but they're happening with more frequency.
They're happening with more frequency, but it's amazing that people forget that they happened. I mean,
that's true.
Because of the news, the way the news is today, and because you have YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, it's like, this is just, oh my God, this has never happened before. We've never seen anything. Yes, we have, actually.
Yeah, I know.
We saw it in the 40s. We saw it in the 20s. We saw, there were riots to make unions. That's how unions came. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We can get into that.
That's a different podcast.
It's a music podcast, damn it.
This isn't anything tonight, podcast, but today we're talking music.
I meant today.
Absolutely. Yes. So anyway, when A&M got taken over, I knew a lot of the people there. So it was really sad. Like the day that they were basically closing their doors.
It was tough for me. I was on the label. Yeah. And I was on the shit end of it.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was a tough time. I was trying to make my bills. I was finally had this great break, Mm-hmm. I was performing in a band called The Reach at the time. And The Reach had a guitar player named Patrick Bolin in it. And Patrick Bolin was one of the guitar players for Pure Prairie League. So awesome. I mean, we're talking long time ago.
I remember
that.
And
they had a couple big hits. Mm-hmm. And so, here's an interesting Survivor connection before I even knew them. There was a recording studio. You might be familiar with this since it's around that time frame. It's a little earlier, like 80, 88, 89. Rumbo Recorders. Do you remember that, Rumbo?
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, Rumbo was in Canoga Park.
Okay.
And they were off the beaten track. They weren't near Sunset Sound and Westlake, Westlake Audio and all those big studios. They were owned by Daryl Dragon, and Daryl Dragon was the captain of Captain Tennille.
Oh, okay. I knew that name. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he was an amazing keyboard player. I mean, this guy was phenomenal. And so he built this recording studio, and at the time, it was all the rage. It had the state-of-the-art, unbelievably beautiful recording studio in Canoga Park, of all places. And so all the biggest acts were there. David Bowie and Guns N' Roses recorded Appetite for Destruction there, and John Mellencamp was there. I mean, everybody that was anybody was in L.A. at one point, recorded at Rumbo.
Mm-hmm.
So he became enamored with my band through a connection from the guitar player. And so he gave us a tour of the studio and offered us, go ahead, record your demos here for free.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, he was just a really lovely guy. As well, he died last year, sadly. But it turns out that Survivor recorded their third album there.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah.
Another connection.
And around the same time period that I was working around the other artists to use the studio. So, it's like I told them, I said, I could have been coming out the front door while you were coming in.
Right.
I wouldn't have known, And so, plus, I was in rehearsal with them when I first met them, and, I was playing a part. It was a Wurlitzer part on one of their songs. And Frankie goes, you know who played that part on that record? I'm like, no. He goes, Daryl Dragon. He played on a ton of their records.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah, and so there's just all these little weird connections.
Right.
But that studio has fond memories for me, It's just a really cool piece of history.
Yeah, it's the same with A&M Studios, that's gone now, right?
I don't know what's in the. There's a building there.
There's a building.
I don't think. There's no recording studio. What's interesting? You go up 2 blocks and over, and Capitol Records is still there, and the old Capitol Records recording studio is still in full force.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to hear, because it was so sad that A&M. I mean, I knew a lot of engineers there, and we could go in after hours. The up and coming engineers, the people that were learning the biz, could go in there and record. So we were able to go in with a band I was in at the time and recorded A&M Studios, which was just
I know,
amazing. What an amazing studio.
It's got to be like the LA equivalent of Abbey Road.
Yeah, well, right. Yeah. It was definitely that. I mean, because Herb Alpert really knew his stuff, and he's the one that built that, so he wanted it to be the best, and nice.
Well, I have a lot of memories of that era, and I grew up in the '80s, and during the whole Sunset Strip thing, and all my bands playing at Madame Wongs and and the China Club. Have you really?
Yeah,
it's so cool. So remember the elevator you would take up to the it was a Chinese restaurant or some crazy place. It was disgusting.
And there was some other club down in Santa Monica that was 2 stories, and you'd play upstairs or downstairs.
Club Lingerie.
That's it.
Well,
was
Club Lingerie was on.
Club Lingerie was on Hollywood, and wasn't that owned by a Fagan brother?
No, Fagan was owned by Coconut Teaser was owned by Fagan.
Coconut Teaser, that's what I'm thinking of.
Len Fagan, who passed away this year.
Yes. Oh, he did.
He died.
Oh, that's too bad.
I knew him really well. He booked my bands constantly.
Oh, did he?
The Coconut Teaser.
Well, he would book anyone. It was great. I played there a lot.
Do you remember FM Station?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, Filthy McNasty. He died too.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, he was. You got to remember, we were probably 25, and he was, 60, 50. Yeah. And that was
People
40 years
old.
ago. Yeah.
I mean, even
Is
Sean
that what
Connery
happens? Because I haven't aged.
Well, yeah, other people.
Sean Connery. Yeah, that hurt, man. My favorite movie is Hunt for Red October.
That's an awesome one. That was that movie is scary. Scary movie.
Just a really great movie.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to change the subject, because I really have a soft spot for L.A. in the I would say the late '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Just all those places. I mean, I just
it's interesting you mentioned that, because I was curious. I hear rumors about LA these days, and I kind of want to ask you because you're still living there. Are you feeling like maybe I should move on from there, or are other people feeling that way? I mean,
funny you should ask.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my wife and I have had this discussion about 8 billion times. We're trying to figure out if we leave, because if we leave LA, I mean, we're obviously home prices and here are just the cost for property here is just not even, doesn't make any sense.
It's still nuts. In other words,
yeah.
Still nuts.
I mean, if you want to live in any decent area, like say you want to live in Santa Monica, not far from the beach, $1 million will buy you an outhouse with a door, maybe a door. You might get the door. I'm not sure they throw that in. And $900,000 for seriously a hot plate and a bathroom and a studio. That's it. Wow. So we're out in the burbs. I live in the Santa Clarita Valley, which is north of the San Fernando Valley.
We lived in Mission Hills.
Yeah.
Last place I lived there. Mission Hills. So,
yeah. Mission Hills. Yeah. And but the point is that the property here is starting to skyrocket. So we're trying to decide, where could we go? I mean, if I'm touring, it doesn't matter where I live. And if I'm doing more soundtrack work and stuff, my studio goes with me. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But I'm still attached to a lot of a big music community that that's become kind of essential in my in sort of my everyday working world. And I know dozens and dozens of great musicians that I constantly work with, or I'm in bands with, or do other things with, and I'm afraid I'm a little nervous about if I left, where would I go, where to go. I mean, we thought about Oregon, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I want to be that far from a body of water. I like being only an hour from the beach.
I'm an hour from the beach.
Well, that's true, and there you go.
As a matter of fact.
So, yeah, you are actually. So there's just things, and plus, LA's got, for me especially, it's very it's home.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You love it or hate it, it's got its problems, and it's nuts here. I mean, sometimes the decisions this city makes are completely mind-boggling, but yeah. We're gonna do something, and I just don't know what it is yet. And this isn't the year to make that decision. Right now, we're sitting and waiting. We're just gonna see what happens, because we're in our home, we're fine. Right. It's not like like we're being forced out. It's just I'm concerned for the future. As taxes may continue to go up, as business struggle to get back online. Back to normal, if there is a normal anymore. What's going to happen? And you never want to make a big life decision if you don't have to in the middle of a pandemic, or
True
something.
Enough. Yeah, we had, me and my wife had a few plans, like getting married in Vegas when this happened, like literally 2 days. We had reservations that we had to, everything shut down a couple days before we were going to take off. So, yeah, I know the feeling.
So you'd be more like like eloping.
Yeah.
You'd be alone.
It would be,
right.
Not a good time to make plans. I'm still making plans, crazy as it seems.
Yeah.
But I know, like, every plan we make is tentative, okay. Possibly,
well,
in a year we could do this. Like, maybe this could happen, but it really
I know the feeling.
I mean, it's tough because it depends on, as everyone knows, it depends on so many things. And
one thing that we did this year was I just got back from New Hampshire. I was there, the fall season in New Hampshire. My wife, she has a business where she's a photographer, and she takes other photographers to New England, and they get award-winning pictures, and she's an amazing, I guess you'd call her a tour guide. Mm-hmm. She's been going back to New England for 20-something years, and this year, because of the COVID situation, it's not like there's a lot of people signing up to go out of town and go on trips, so, we decided to take our own little quarantining holiday, and it was different because, we weren't around people. We would just go to our hotel or wherever we were staying, and there was nobody on the streets. So it was really kind of strange, but kind of beautiful too. And anyway, I got to see what she does over there, so it's really cool because I never go with her on the New England trips.
Oh, that's nice. Is that her behind you?
Can you see her?
Does she know she's in the shot this whole time?
No, that's a keyboard right there on wall.
No, the other side.
Yeah, she's at her. She's here. She's on her.
Oh, is she listening to the podcast?
She's at her station.
That's great. That's great. You can't really
in
see
the
her
studio.
much. It's faded in the back. It's your assistant.
Yeah. She's.
Well, that's awesome.
She's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Fallphototrips.com.
Very good.
There's a plug for you.
Yeah, nice. I put it in the. Send me the link. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
because I know someone reads them. Occasionally, but sometimes leave mistakes in to see if.
All kidding aside, she's actually I'm really proud of her work. She's amazing, and she's really brought a lot of joy to a lot of photographers.
That's a really awesome thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those photo trips, I've heard of those before. That just sounds amazing, like an amazing thing. We just did our first vacation.
But that is probably the craziest thing you could say that we did this year is we actually flew somewhere and came back, and a little uncomfortable about it. But we're not idiots. We're going to maintain a distance and wear our masks and be safe as much as possible. But it's very difficult, very, very difficult to make any plans under these circumstances, as we were saying. And, maybe after today, things will calm down. Maybe the worst is to come. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we have no idea. I mean, I would, all of the...
We wanted to get home before the election, though, just in case.
Understandable.
Just in case there was something funky
weird
at the airports or something. We just wanted to get our asses home. So we're safe. We boarded up the windows. I'm kidding.
Oh, man. Oh,
I mean, what about you with Portland? I mean, it's not exactly...
Portland, Portland is 100 miles from here.
That's true.
For 2, 3, 4, and 5, most of what's happening in Portland is being blown out of the... really blown up.
Yeah,
really blown up. I see people
they're using it as a political...
They are using it.
Yeah.
A lot. And there's many people I know who are from Portland, and they put maps up to just show you what's going on. They'll put a map up of Portland, and then they'll put a little red line around where this stuff's actually happening. Mm-hmm. It's like a 2 or 3 block area downtown, which is like every city. Right. It's like in L.A. if there's a riot.
Well, actually, the riots here in L.A. were unfortunately. I wish I could say that for L.A. because they were all over the place.
Oh, okay.
They were in Santa Clarita. They were in Beverly Hills. They were downtown, and we're talking. They were riots. So that's all these areas.
That's a big difference because there are two points there, and this is maybe taking things too far. Don't listen to me. I'm just a podcaster. But one is 90% of the what they started calling riots were peaceful protests. And as happens in L.A., I've seen it, witnessed it in L.A., it happens in Portland too. The police basically push for a riot. They push real hard against the people that look aggressive. Mm-hmm. And they get things. Yeah, they get
try to rile them up.
They try to rile them up, and damned if it don't work. It works.
Make, I don't know if that's by policy or whatever. So people have a right to be angry with the police department.
I think they do. I think that. I'm kind of on the side of history where historically the police department has not been great. If you live in L.A., the L.A. Police Department is very close to the New York Police Department. They have not been kind, gentle. They are trained to do things a very different way. They're also dealing with the population very different. They're dealing with the serious drug traffickers. They're dealing with the serious gun traffickers. It's not something that most places deal with, but it turns them into a very aggressive, overly
aggressive, and there's
Portland
no reason. I still don't understand why there's any reason to shoot anyone, or more to the point, the car chases. Never understood that.
Yeah, and
you have helicopters. Let them go.
Now you have drones,
and you'll catch them when they're stopped.
Yeah. You can follow them with drones or cameras at this point.
Or that.
There is no reason to follow them with a car anymore.
If you chase them, they're going to run, and that's when they're going to kill people.
Yeah. That's when they run into things. It makes some great news.
Wait till they stop, and then go get them.
And then go get them.
I never understood that. I just like, that doesn't make any sense. You've got millions of innocent bystanders that you're going to put in jeopardy for one guy that stole something. Or is trying to, or he's got drugs or whatever the hell he's doing. And it's just, I don't know. There's not a lot of logic to some of the things that the police department does. And I can understand why so many people are very fed up,
Yeah. Well, I especially understand it from different sides of it, because you and I honestly will be treated much differently by police than a lot of society. It's harder for us to see, but I see it, and especially, I mean, to your point, Portland's over 100 miles away, so we're pretty safe. And Eugene tried to be like Portland, because Eugene always wants to be like Portland, but it was a very small incident, and it's kind of over. We'll see what happens today. Things could. I mean, we do see a lot of nutso stuff here, because the scariest thing about Oregon, and I always knew this, but it was never out in the open like this. But there is a lot of, serious. I'll just call them terrorists. Domestic terrorism is strong in Oregon, in all of Oregon. And so that's a little freaky. But, yeah.
Well, I mean, all through the country, we've had school shootings and things like that in recent times. So, I mean, the last thing you want to do is give these people a soapbox, to dog whistle to them is ridiculous.
It's scary. It's not been done before.
I mean, because that element's always existed. That element's always existed. There's always going to be disgruntled people that think this or that. And the last thing you want to do as a responsible person is to, amplify more violence. That just seems
the craziest thing about today. And by the way, it is the November 3rd for anyone listening to this, because it may not be out on the 3rd. That's why we're having this discussion. The craziest thing I've seen is all the news saying, it's a historic day. This is a day of history. Okay, they've never said that on November 3rd before. That's never been said.
Yeah, I know.
It's election day.
It's historic in the sense that it's never been 2020.
Well, yeah. Okay.
That's the only difference. It's been,
Well, actually, yeah, we've had an election even during a pandemic before.
No, I didn't even mean that. But I just meant it's just 2020 and it's not 2019.
Right. It's not.
That's historic.
That's historic.
Tomorrow will be historic because it's not the 3rd. So,
it'll be the 4th, and who knows what'll happen that day.
I don't know. It's messed up. So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So you got your drums back there. So what are you working on these days, or are you working on anything?
These days I work on very little. I've had a bunch of chronic pain issues, so it's been hard for me to play drums. So I do what we were talking about. I put up YouTube videos.
Oh, okay.
So I literally play around a little bit and occasionally put up solos on YouTube. And I do. Right. I just did a review on this stand, because when I went to buy this podcasting stand, I couldn't find a review. So I said, well, I'll put one up, because it's frustrating when you don't see anybody that's used it, and they're not cheap. So I was like, I want to. That
looks like a Shure SM.
This is a SM7B.
The SM7B. Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I don't know that it's necessary, because I have AKG 200. Oh, it's not behind me today. But usually it's behind me. I use them for overheads. And one of them went bad, so I bought a 420, AKG 420, which I was really impressed with. I wasn't sure, but it's warmer. It's more like that mic. And what mic is that you're using?
Yeah. I'm using a Rode NT Gold.
It sounds great to me.
Yeah.
To my ears.
And I've got it
really
going
nice.
through. I have some light compression on it, and I sing with this one. I have a couple of them. I use them for overheads.
You do,
and I use them for vocals. and I use them for acoustic guitar.
Yeah, they're good. They're a nice mic.
I've got a bunch of
great.
condenser mics that I just think that this is the best all around mic. That so I just leave this one out for just this purpose.
Right.
But I have a couple more, and I use them for just various things. They're great.
And I like using the SM7B because it's so much more direct. It doesn't pick up anything but me, and you get more of that radio voice if you get up on it and you want to do that thing.
Right.
You get more. You get
that
a little
sexy
more
voice.
It's KVW2. And so it's nice.
That's cool.
And the stand is what did I just buy? Gator Frameworks. Really sweet. So you can
how
do
cool.
this and it just stays.
It's like a broadcast kind of situation.
It's a broadcast stand. It's stuck to my desk, which is another nice thing. It's really out of the way when you're not using it. I was using a boom stand, and it's kind of, because I have a very small space. If I had a bigger studio, it wouldn't matter as much, but it's a very small space.
Right. You end up kicking the legs on it.
Right. Yes.
Constantly.
Running
it's
into
if I can kick it, I will.
Exactly. If I can knock it over, it's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Damn right. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, we should probably wrap it up. We've been going for a little while, having quite the conversation.
Holy, wow.
Yeah.
I don't even know when, I don't know when we started, but I know this will be one sizable file.
It was a bit ago. A little bit ago.
Wait, 120, 122.
120. I really appreciate
Probably
you coming
longer than
on. This has been, we barely even got into some of the questions I wanted to ask. I was going to ask
like
you.
what? What did you miss?
What did I miss? We talked about, I guess we did. We did. I was just going to ask you some more behind the scenes stuff about Survivor, but we got to the good stuff because, I like finding out how people are getting around the country and what gear they're taking, and we got into all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked me that because I'm a gear nut, and last thing I'll say is, I feel really kind of lucky in a sense that I grew up in an era where analog was king, and it was the switch to digital, and so I have a good handle on both. I'm really computer. Extremely, knowledgeable technologically speaking, and I use tons of stuff, everything from Omnisphere to all my VSTs and everything. But I really love my real instruments, and so I have a good sense of both. I know a lot of guys that have, as they gotten older, they haven't gotten into. I started with MIDI in '83. Before MIDI was even universal among the keyboards. They all had their own proprietary connection.
They had different.
This is only good if I buy another Korg.
I completely forgot about that. The guy that taught me everything, or not everything, but mostly what I know about music. Hey, John, how you doing? He gave me some of the questions that I asked today, but he is a total gear hound, and he taught me. I started out analog, and because of that, I could figure out the digital world so much better. Because especially Pro Tools is still,
because it's all modeled after.
It's all modeled after a real studio. The board is modeled after the actual boards back in the day, and now I have a digital board. It still looks like. When you bring up the interface, it's still a board, and I'm just so thankful that I know what routing is. And
although it is calibrated differently,
it is. That's true. It's not
zero's not the same as zero on an analog board.
And that is annoying.
Yeah. It's not. You got to get used to it. It's not really annoying if you know it, and you're just aware of it. But there's some major differences. But the routing and things like that is very similar in how you bust things and move things and anyway, I was just saying that earlier. I was just saying that I have a affinity to my piano and the Wurlitzer and things like that because I have better sounding equipment, digitally, and you could argue that they're more perfect, but there's something about playing those instruments that I don't know if the history that comes with it, the fact that they're heavy and that they take up a footprint, they sort of demand an energy that that software doesn't.
Right.
They're breathing. They're also responding to the environment because something real physically is happening within the instrument and interacting with the air in the room you're in. So there's just so many things that we're missing on our records these days because of that. And I know you can grow up and never hear those things and still like the songs you like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change. But I just think that, it's the same reason why vinyl is sort of making a resurgence.
It's true. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I talk about it with friends of mine too. Coming from someone who now can produce something in his bedroom and it sounds okay. The only way right now, the way I could make this drum set sound better to me is put it in a studio and put it through a Neve.
Yeah, right.
Beyond
an
that,
SSL or a Neve.
An SSL or something, or a handmade board, and
right.
That's gonna make it sound better. It'll sound better by it'll sound better to you and I. Right?
Yeah.
To you and I.
Yes and no. I mean, we could get really kooky here. I mean, you take it to, Abbey Road Studios and use one of those drum rooms that George Martin used. I mean, some of that, goodly ghosty gooiness is going to end up on that recording.
Right. Yeah. That's what I think.
The walls hold some kind of vibe, energy, or something. And I don't know. You could argue that it's not just all bullshit, but there is something to that. I think. Mm-hmm. I think that structures and things that are, because you're dealing with the physical environment. You're not dealing with a represented environment.
Oh, 100. Yeah, because I've brought drums. I recorded drums in a studio here, like the best studio in town. That's done some famous recordings, and I brought them in here and then piled stuff on top of it. And to me, those drums because it's an acoustic room. The room is tuned acoustically. It sounds so much better. But it's still, I think I'm the one that notices the most. Because I've recorded dozens of tracks in here for other people. I've recorded tons of done mastering in here, or parts of mastering, and recorded and mixed. And
who's crazy about this is Frankie Sullivan. We had long conversations about how they recorded Can't Hold Back and some of these earlier songs, some of their big hits. And a lot of times they would walk around the recording studio and find a better room that wasn't a recording room. They recorded a couple songs in the kitchen of Rumbo. Because they liked the way, because at least Frankie, I'm not so sure about Jim Peterick, but with regard to Frankie, he was more a Zeppelin guy. He was happy just put one microphone and let the band be.
Right.
And so when you're dealing with a physical environment, it's where you are and where you place that is everything. That's part of your sound. When you're dealing in a digital environment, what you're doing is you're recording very, very very isolated, and then you have to add in your environment, and that's so. It's not intuitive.
It's not intuitive, and it's a lot harder. I mean, that's what I struggle with the most, because I can get a decent sound in here. I've got I've got all this stuff around to help, so it's not such a square room. But in order to, I still have to put it digitally, kind of put it in a studio, and that's what takes the most time.
Right.
Is figuring out what.
Right, and you have to rely.
Good.
You have to rely on the software engineers to hopefully recreate, what nature does for us very easily.
Right.
And you could argue that you could create something that's never been heard before, and that might be an artistic piece. But if you want to hear an instrument, I mean, if you listen to any of those great records, Physical Graffiti, or some old Stones records, Sticky Fingers, or any of that stuff that was recorded, you're not listening to drums.
No.
You're listening to the place, because the place is indelibly glued to that sound. It is that sound. That's what I love about
and you're listening
real
to
instruments.
the performer too, because
right,
it doesn't matter where you put them. It doesn't matter what drums are on. No one's going to sound like Charlie Watts. No one's going to sound like Bono, which I still to this day don't understand. People can play those beats all day long on the same kit. It won't sound like him. That's part of. I mean, that's I think part of the big magic of that one mic. Well, yeah, it was one mic on Bonham. It was. Look at the drummer that was being mic'd.
They put the mic overhead, and that was it.
On that guy, and because I've played the kits like he had the Ludwig Versalite kits sound terrible. They are not a great sounding kit, but the way he hit sounded amazing.
Right.
Sounded absolutely amazing.
And no click.
Right. Well, that you can hear, which I love.
Yeah.
I love where many of those they speed up and slow down and
just listen to Black Dog and tons of those tunes, you can't follow them. You had to be part of the unit. Right. That's what's so magical. And I just think I hope people get back to that a little bit, cuz that's what making music is, It's not about numbers. You know? I mean, I guess it can be if you want to redefine it as that. And and there's always going to be people trying to push the envelope of, what the current tools can do today, Right. But there is something to be said about something real. And I don't find that young people are that interested in playing an instrument anymore. They're more interested in creating, There's no doubt about that. There's tons of people creating stuff, but they don't need to learn an instrument to get whatever they're after, and that's a dying art, I think.
Well, I hope not. I mean, that might be true, but there's so many more of us every day that I hope there's still a lot of kids that are gonna learn to play instruments, because I'll say it again. I think everyone should have a drum set in their garage to bang on. Just to relieve tension, if nothing else. It's just such a fun thing to do.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know.
It's so great.
Actually, drums was my first instrument.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a drummer by any stretch of the imagination. I can't play. But when I was like 6 years old, they gave me drum lessons, my parents. It didn't stick with me. And then later on, I found the piano. And the piano is basically a percussive instrument.
Oh, right. It's
classified as a percussive instrument. And B3, the organ, which I love to play, rock organ. I'm not necessarily a gospel player, but the rock kind of stuff where you're doing smears and move. Man, I play keyboards like I would play bongos.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah. And because it's like that.
So I get to bang on things too.
It's true. The keyboard is a percussion instrument. It's fun. And cool, I hope people are still going to be learning to play their instrument, because that's so that can't be a dying art.
I'm not saying that.
All these young kids.
Maybe I'm overreacting, but it doesn't feel like if you're not, as a kid, you're not always patient. That's not something kids are.
No.
You learn patience. And so when you have these machines, basically, that will, that'll write songs for you, that will put together chord changes for you, that will do all kinds of things. There's, you still had to push the buttons, but I don't know, where does the art end and where does it become somebody else's artwork?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's starting to, the lines are kind of getting blurred. I mean, pushing the buttons is not necessarily the artwork, but it could be redefined as such. And, it's uncomfortable.
Well, it's interesting because as we talk about this, something that comes to my mind is maybe it'll be like everything else. You were talking about how vinyl is back in now. Maybe studios will come back, because a lot of big artists and, older artists are still going into really expensive studios to record their stuff, where they could record at home. They have amazing studios, but they still go to the nice studios. So maybe there'll be like a renaissance of studio recordings and people wanting to go into the studio and get that sound. Yeah, that would be,
I guess it's kind of like,
cool.
I guess it's like kind of going to the gym. You can work out at home. You don't even need equipment, but there's something about going to a professional gym that puts you in a mindset like, I'm not spending all this money to walk out with nothing. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And the Jack Black went that direction. He always wanted to record in studios and leave mistakes in, and still does. And so there are some out there like that. It's just it's not so much in pop music, but it's still out there. And all the country artists still use studios big time. I mean, they're still spending
the whole Nashville.
Yeah. They're still spending.
So you're not performing at all, though. I mean, obviously not this year, but I mean, right? You're not playing at all.
No, I haven't for a while because it was mainly because of pain issues. But it's better now. So I kind of put my feelers out now and again. It's a very small town, so I'm very cynical about who I want to play with at this point. It's like I don't blame. I've spent a lot of years on the drums, so I want to play with decent people. Yeah, and so that's always
slimmer pickings where you are, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying without trying to insult the entire music community of Eugene.
Well, you live there, I don't.
Slimmer pickings.
Yeah, that's a very tactful way of. It's not slim pickings; it's just a little slimmer.
It's a little slimmer.
And slim can be good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody wants to slim down,
can
so
be good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just hope that COVID, ends. Obviously, we all hope it ends soon. But I'm actually at a very strange time in my life because I've never not had a gig.
Right.
That's what I do.
Uh-huh.
And I not only was Survivor's tour canceled this year, but I'm in 2 other bands that tour almost as much as they do, and they're off the table right now.
They're off the table. Well, what about when you're able? Are they still? Are you still connected to them? Where that still pick back up?
Yeah,
when you're able.
But I'm talking about on a typical year, I probably would play 200 shows a year.
Yeah.
With different people, Survivor might do 60 or 40 or 30 or whatever they do, but the other bands, would travel and do stuff too. So that's all off the table at the moment. I mean, we have like a sporadic, gig at the Canyon Club or something in a parking lot or a Zoom thing. Mm-hmm. Whatever. It's just not. It's not the same.
It's not.
No. Because I mean, you always hear musicians bitching about moving their gear. Bullshit. I enjoy it. I do it anyway. Mm-hmm. I have a road crew with Survivor, but with my other bands, I move my own gear, and there's something very rewarding. I'm not saying I wouldn't mind help. It would be nice to have a couple roadies doing it and have it all set up, especially when you're tired and you're done. But for the most part, for some of the bands I play with, my rig's very complex. It's a combination of real instruments and digital instruments, and so it's all, there's a lot going on. And, it gives me a chance to sort of, it's like a race car driver that's working on his own engine.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's true. I bitch about my gear at least half the time that I move it, about setting up and tearing down, back when I was doing that kind of thing. But I do, occasionally I would step back and say, well, if I really hate it so much, why did I become a drummer? I mean, there's something about that kit, I still have a love for the drums, the acoustic drums, because I could get an electric kit, I could move a lot less gear. So there must be something about it that I do enjoy.
There's priorities.
Yeah.
You have priorities.
Right.
Now, some people's backs is the priority, and I get that. But my point was, it's a visceral thing, I was just trying to relate it to the fact that in this pandemic situation we're in, I even missed setting up the gear. I miss it. I miss the winding the cables, whatever it is. It's all part of the experience for me. So, it's what I've done my whole life, and so it's very, very frustrating to not know what this industry is going to look like when we emerge from this.
Yeah, it is. It's I do know. It's really hard when you're. I mean, for anyone who had any kind of job, but your kind of job is very unique, and there's a lot of people in your situation that were doing what you do on every level. That it just suddenly
you just can't do it anymore.
No, right.
I mean, even for a podcaster, I started out I would have my podcast right here. So you're face to face. You have two people in a room. Whole different thing than being on a Zoom call. Now, the Zoom call has opened up the opportunity to talk to, like, I don't know, the keyboard player from Survivor, which would have been tough before the way I was doing it before. But I could have caught you coming through. I literally could have said, hey, if you're anywhere near here, come on by. Let's sit down.
It's tough. Isn't a conversation face-to-face with somebody in the same room similar to analog recording?
Yes.
And doing what we're doing here is still effective, but there's something missing.
Yes.
At least there's information that's having to be sacrificed.
Big
for
time,
the sake of a conversation.
Because we're looking at each other through a digital device. And, we're looking at even though I like my digital device that I'm currently using, it's the worst camera that I have. But it's weird. It's not like sitting across from you and being able to offer you a cup of coffee or a beer or something before we start, and having that.
Conversations are just different, and in an era, hopefully a short era, where people are being forced not to, really not to connect in a physical way. That's a big part of who we are as human beings. That's a big part of how we socialize, how we grow, how we evolve and communicate. And you're basically, you're kind of compromising. You have to be compromising for safety, reasons, but you don't notice it until you take it away, and then all of a sudden it's like, what a plastic society this is. Where all feels something's missing. Everything
true.
Feels like there's this thin veneer of fake.
Right. Yeah. It's very good point.
I don't want this to be normal. I don't mind if it's a choice every once in a while, but to be normal would be. I think it would definitely change us as humans.
It won't be it's not the new normal. I'm sure of that. I'm sure that we will be able to. I mean, worst case scenario, we will make bigger pods. You know what I mean? So it won't just be two people in the house. It'll be 20.
Right.
But your neighborhood will be included in your circle, whatever it is.
Right.
And people are starting to do that already, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I just had a visit with both of my sisters, and it was really weird because, we were all traveling. So we all had to kind of keep our distance and not do what you would normally do. It was very strange. But, yeah, and the cues you get from a real person in a room aren't the same as on the Zoom call. It's just not the same cues, you know. So your conversation is going to be slightly different, and the name of the podcast.
Well, we didn't evolve this way,
right? And the name of the podcast,
we evolved the other way.
Were you still talking? That means so it's people talking over each other sometimes.
Right.
You
well,
can't
the
really
latency
there
can be
Zoom.
latency.
It doesn't work as well.
No,
it's better in a
same.
room if you're going to talk over each other.
There's a couple of these companies that have tried to do online band rehearsals.
Oh, really?
They're not doing so well. The latency is ridiculous. Everybody has to be in the same city, at least in the same city. Otherwise, the latency gets greater the further away you are from the participants.
Mm-hmm.
And so, music is so perfect for this description because it illustrates the fact more than any other art form, I think, just how connected we are as humans. Because in order to play music with another person, I have to be in sync with them in some way, and that's a very immediate. It's a need to be. It's that need to be in sync and on time is primary. Otherwise, you're playing on your own and I'm playing on my own, and we're not making something. We're just, two roads that are going in different directions. And so, latency is the death of bands, of music, of tracks, and nothing illustrates that horror show more than COVID, because we're screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's true. Totally true.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, I look forward to the days getting back out. It's for sure.
And it will happen. It will happen. I hate to predict when, but the actual scientists that I listen to, I'll mention John Campbell again for anyone who wants some real science. John Campbell's an internet show from the UK.
I gotta check that out.
John Campbell.
What kind of scientist is he?
He is. He's a. I forgot what level, but he's a teaching nurse basically, and he has a doctorate in teaching. So he has taught medical practices for years and years and years. And his YouTube show before this was just telling people about different medical things, about, different research, basically. So since this has happened, every single day he goes on and he compiles all of the research that's been happening and tries to break it down. So it'll be a different subject every day. The UK will be a subject, and he'll actually break down like all the different cases, and here's what we're finding out about this, and here's what we're finding out about that. And you find out interesting things like 80% of people who have been hospitalized with COVID had low vitamin D rates. Things like this. And this is worldwide.
We've been taking vitamin D supplements.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. Yeah. And he talks about a lot of different stuff about it. He's been on a lot of different shows in the UK when they want, they'll bring he's one of those experts they bring on. But he not only disseminates all this information, but he puts it there. So it's like, this is where I got this. If you actually want to go read this really boring paper, it's here, right there. And he says, like, don't take my word for it. It's right here. So I like that.
In the peer-reviewed documentation, he pulls it out and
yeah, exactly. And that's what he waits for is stuff obviously takes a while because people don't get that the science doesn't happen overnight. So it's hard for anyone to know about what's this particular thing. And I also listen to Fauci or however you say his name. I still think that he's trying to get out good information and, try and listen to people. But those people have said since March that it would probably be next spring. They've been saying the same thing.
That's true.
We're working harder than we've ever worked on a vaccine ever. And
but you're not gonna rush a vaccine that you're gonna pump into people,
right?
Without it being tested. And let's be honest.
Yeah,
that takes time.
And that's what I think people don't quite get, and it's scary. Even the flu vaccine currently is 50% effective, because the flu is a very tricky animal.
Right.
So that's what's tough. It's like even if this comes out, then what? Oh man, it's quite a road.
What we really need, if not a vaccine, I'm actually not counting on a vaccine, so to speak. I mean, eventually, probably. But what I'm more hoping or willing to believe is that there'll be treatments, kind of like with AIDS. I mean, it's not the death sentence it was at one time,
right?
I'm not saying that it's not dangerous, and I certainly wouldn't want it, but they still don't have a cure for it. But you don't hear as many people falling over from dying from it. They learn to live with it with a boatload of drugs and treatments. COVID might end up in that camp. We don't know.
That's a really good point, because AIDS, your life expectancy with AIDS is a lot longer than it was 20 years ago. I mean, it's extremely.
It was a death sentence in the 80s.
Right.
You're going to be dead in 6 months.
Yeah,
that was it.
That was nothing. And even in this 7 months, COVID has been. There's been a better life, and there's less people dying from it. There's almost as many people going to the hospital, but there are less people dying from it because they're already starting to figure out. Well, for one, they're not as crowded, but they're also figuring out in all different countries different things that are working for treating it. So that you're right about that. That's one of the best things is that.
So I think that a lot of people forget, or at least they don't say, is that getting back to normal isn't so much about a vaccine. It's about confidence. And because nobody's going to go to a show or go, do the things they did if they don't feel confident,
right?
That they're not going to get sick or that they're not going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And that confidence, it doesn't come back just because we have a vaccine.
It's true. It's true. That's the crazy thing about our current situation in the United States.
You can shut it off, but turn it back on is going to take a while.
It's going to take a while, and it's possible that with good procedures you could do anything right now, right this today, but people won't agree with that. They won't agree with what's safe and what's effective. So that's really hard. So even if we could get to that point, which seems even less likely, but even because there are countries that have almost defeated it because they're a different type of society, and everyone will follow the procedures that are laid out.
They don't have a Bill of Rights. So,
well, there's that. Yeah, they don't have a Bill of Rights. That's basically it. But that's a whole thing too, because we have a Bill of Rights. You still have to wear seatbelts, or you're going to get a ticket. But
there are things for the greater good. I mean, we're regardless of how big this country is, that's our biggest problem, is that there's just a lot of people in different regions with different specific problems to those regions. And so there's no panacea, there's no one fix-all. Right. And we always try to lay the Constitution on top of the entire country, and then sometimes it's perfect and sometimes it's not so perfect. And so there has to be a sense of responsibility that has to be ingrained in everyone wherever they are, to understand that sometimes certain things are better for the greater good, and sometimes they're not. I mean, and where we draw that line is the hardest thing, I think, for modern Americans to get their head around.
It's the hardest thing for modern Americans, yeah. Back in 1942, every American, almost, actually not everyone, but most Americans were on the same, they had the same idea. They were going to do anything they could do to defeat this enemy across the water.
It was the war effort.
It was the war effort. And that's where we are now, but no one agrees on what should be done for this war effort, right?
Because like they're too mired down in taking their rights away.
Right.
It's like, I don't know. I mean, sure, there's a time to ring that bell.
You bet.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is it, though. I mean, because you want to talk the economy, you want to talk getting back to normal, you want to talk about evolving and growing and learning and going back to school, you gotta get rid of this disease first. Right. That's really the only thing stopping everything from moving forward, is this.
Yeah. I mean,
the only thing we should be discussing.
We're even trying to go back.
Not us.
We tried to go back to school in all 3 states, Washington, Oregon, California, and it's not working. I mean, we might have to reverse.
Kids are now getting
course.
sick, and kids are starting to get sick on what did they say? 60,000 kids were reported with positive tests just this week.
Wow.
In the country. So obviously,
and that's not even getting into the whole what's it called? The disease changes. Because it's
the herd mentality?
No, the disease it not more.
Mutations.
It's still mutating because it's new in humans.
Right.
It's not lived in people before, so it's going, well, hey, if I do this, I might work better and then kill more people.
There's also another factor, and actually, it's not a living thing. It's a biological, it's a virus, so it's not actually alive. Right. It's like fire. Fire's not actually alive. It's a chemical reaction, and the virus is basically the same kind of analogy. It's not a living organism. You can't kill it. You can destroy the materials it's made out of, but it's not living. It's not like looking. So it's a kind of a weird thing to get your head around. And the other thing is that they found, from what I've read, is that it's not so much that the virus exists. It's how how dense, how much of it can overwhelm your system. Right. So someone might cough near you, and maybe you get a couple nanoparticles. You'll never know, and your body will pass them through and destroy them because it's not overwhelming the system. It's when you're around a lot of people that could potentially be infecting you. That's when you have a problem, because your body hasn't figured out how to fight, the infection when it's over a certain threshold, and that threshold is different for different people.
And we haven't quite figured out what that threshold is, which is also difficult.
Well, exactly. So it's a moving target. And it sucks. It sucks.
It does suck. So, in conclusion, everyone.
So, on those words, COVID I leave you.
Sucks.
It sucks. Enjoy your day.
Oh man. Okay. Well, let's Listen, Jeffrey, this has been an amazing Jeff, what do you know about it?
Jeff is fine. Jeffrey,
This has been an amazing conversation. I think I've kept you long enough, just about. I could go on.
Oh, I enjoyed it, man.
Good.
I had a good time.
Good.
Shoot, we could talk about all kinds of things.
Yeah, we could go on a long time,
but it was a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. And you've been listening to Were You Still Talking? This is Joel Albrecht, and on the show today I've had Jeffrey Bryan, who's a composer, producer, sometimes actor from long ago, keyboard player for Survivor.
Failed actor. Failed actor.
Okay. Thanks so much for coming on. And everyone, be good to each other. And as I am saying these days, be good to yourself. That's it.
All right. Awesome. Let me stop the. Should I stop this recording?
Yeah,
you
sure.
don't need any more.